Spending spree. Taiwan adds a whopping $8.6 billion to its military budget. 3 years, 7 months in jail. 20-year-old activist Tony Chung becomes the youngest victim of Hong Kong's national security law. Going green. Taiwan opens its first geothermal plant in decades. And traditional cuisine, but with a modern twist. How a new Indigenous generation is serving up a new kind of flavor. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Taiwan's legislature has passed a bill to boost its defense spending by over $8 billion. The funds are slated to be spent on missile upgrades for the Air Force and Navy and come on top of the existing defense budget for 2022. James Chater has this report.
决议海空战力提升计划采购特别条例制定通过。
An $8.6 billion spending boost for Taiwan's defense capability. Taiwan's legislature on Tuesday passed an extra budget to ramp up spending on a range of weapons systems, including anti-ship missiles, ground-air defense systems, and high-performance submarines. The funds for the Navy and Air Force will be spent over 5 years from 2022 to 2026. It comes on top of the $17 billion defense budget already set aside for 2022.
保障国家安全，当然我们要加速加量我们的所有的防御系统，同时要把整个军工产业带上来，提升国家的防御能力。
Projects will be partly handled by the state-owned National Zhongshan Institute of Science and Technology. Opposition Kuomintang officials expressed concern over the ability of Taiwan's legislators to monitor use of the funds.
只要交给中科院以后，发包给民间，立法院就无法监督。
Recent rapid advancements in China's armed forces have alarmed observers, with reports of plans to massively increase its nuclear arsenal and tests of hypersonic weapons both points of concern.
Under these kinds of circumstances, there are several things we have been doing and we will try to do again and again. The first is to beef up our defense capabilities. We think weakness is inviting aggression, and therefore we want to have the ability to defend ourselves.
Separately on Tuesday, Taiwanese defense officials confirmed a US missile destroyer sailed through the Taiwan Strait. A former defense minister has called on the government to include the United States, Japan, and Australia in the annual Hanguang military drills, which are designed to prepare Taiwan's armed forces for an invasion by China.
透过汉光演习呢，可以由美国、日本、台湾呢，共同成立一个危机的联合处理小组，来共同面对中共解放军在台海或台海的上空的这样的一个文攻武吓。
And while that prospect remains undecided, Taiwan's government hopes that ahead of any potential conflict with China, this injection of military spending will keep the country firmly at the controls. Chris Ma and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
US President Joe Biden has formally invited Taiwan to participate in the inaugural Summit for Democracy. The list of 110 invited participants includes Taiwan, but not China. The summit will focus on the challenges facing democracies in an age of disinformation and competing authoritarian modes of government. Taiwan's foreign ministry confirmed Digital Minister Audrey Tang and US Representative Xiaobi Kim will represent the country at the virtual summit scheduled for the 9th and 10th of December. A Hong Kong court has sentenced a 20-year-old activist to 3 years and 7 months in prison under the national security law imposed by Beijing. Tony Chung, founder of the pro-independence group Student Localism, was arrested last year outside the US consulate. He was allegedly planning to seek asylum before he was intercepted by national security officers. Chung is charged with undermining national unification and conspiring to publish seditious materials, as well as money laundering. Chung pleaded guilty to the charges earlier this month, telling the court he had no shame in his heart. Chang is the youngest person to be sentenced under the controversial national security law. Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick spoke to Patrick Poon, a legal researcher with Tokyo-based Meiji University. He began by asking him what he thought about the charges.
Well, I think like for the sentencing itself, we have to also consider the charges laid against him. What it means, like money laundering, is actually also problematic. Using money to operate the organization, the prosecution has produced any concrete evidence to prove how he used the money himself. The defense counsel also actually mentioned that because the organization doesn't have a bank account, so they use his own. And that is the only reason we can believe that he used the money for the operation of the organization, unless the prosecution has evidence to prove that he did use the money himself. But because there's actually reasonable doubt, so that's actually should be benefits to the defendant. So we don't see any proof of beyond reasonable doubt in his case. And the judge's comment actually also make it very clear that he actually ignores any concrete legal reasoning in his case.
The heaviest part of his sentence is for secession under the national security law, for attempting to split up the country. This is in spite of him having no concrete plans to do so, but merely advocating for this belief. Do you think that that is a significant precedent that this case has set?
For secession, actually, like in Hong Kong nowadays, we feel it's very much similar to mainland China. It's actually only if you just make slogans or you call people out to take actions that you can easily be accused of secession. It's actually something what we can only see another evidence of mainlandization of Hong Kong. And I don't see actually how people would be accused of secession in other countries if you just call for people to take part in actions or join protests or just chant slogans. Unfortunately, we can see the unfortunate and ridiculous part of Hong Kong nowadays. And definitely, I think like for a charge so-called secession against a young person, imprisoning him for 3 years and 7 months is something actually very serious and actually incomprehensible.
Tony Cheung is the youngest person to be sentenced under the national security law so far. When he was arrested, he was just a teenager. So what kind of a message do you think this is sending to the young people of Hong Kong?
Well, I think definitely it's actually a chilling effect on other young people. And the message the authorities want to convey is definitely, you will be the next Tony Cheung if you continue to call for more attention on the cause that he made. And then also if you continue to chant slogan or you try to do things online or you try to call people out to take part in action, you will be the next Tony Cheung. No matter how young you are, you will be targeted and you will be imprisoned.
Taiwanese authorities are seeking Beijing's help in extraditing a murder suspect who fled to China this week. The Taiwan national, surnamed Huang, allegedly gunned down his victim in New Taipei's Xindian district on Monday. Hours later, he flew from Taoyuan Airport to Xiamen in China, where he's currently believed to be in a quarantine hotel. Taiwan and China signed a judicial assistance agreement in 2009, and China has repatriated wanted criminals to Taiwan in the past. But with cross-strait relations currently at a low ebb, it remains unclear whether Chinese authorities will cooperate in this case. Defense ministers of Japan and Vietnam on Tuesday said they strongly oppose unilateral attempts to change the status quo in the region. The two countries signed a new cyberspace agreement to address threats in the Indo-Pacific, indicating China without identifying any country by name. It comes as Japan continues to step up military cooperation with international allies such as the US, Australia and India to counter China's assertiveness in the region.
最近の東シナ海、南シナ海を含む地域情勢について意見を交わしました。その中で私と残大臣は既存の国際秩序と相入れない力による一方的な現状変更の試みについて強く反対をし、法の支配に基づく既存の国際秩序を維持するために日越が引き続き共同していくことなどで一致をいたしました。
Taiwan's first geothermal plant in 30 years has opened as the country pushes to develop more renewable energy. The 4.2 megawatt Shuai plant in Yilan County is the first privately built geothermal power plant in Taiwan and can meet the power needs of 10,000 small households. It pumps hot water from a depth of about 1 to 2 kilometers underground, and the water and steam are transported through pipelines to the plant's turbines. Vice President William Lai said at Tuesday's opening ceremony that the plant is a milestone.
不仅仅是台湾再生能源发展的关键的一步也是台湾迈向2050碳中和非常重要的一环。
A COVID-19 nasal spray vaccine developed in Taiwan may move to human trials in the first half of next year. National Taiwan University Hospital researchers say their spray vaccine shows promising results in tests on mice. It specifically targets the Delta variant of COVID and works by creating antibodies in the nasal cavity that can lower the viral load. This also helps lower the chance of transmission. 7 types of COVID-19 nasal spray vaccine are in development worldwide.
这是喷鼻的呢，所以这个当然本身是有一些吸引力哈。因为第一个你不用打针嘛哈，第二个它会产生 IgA 哈，所以理论上它可以比较减少病毒的传播。
Coming up, China says the case of tennis star Peng Shuai is being maliciously hyped. Details after the break. Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A reminder of our top story. Taiwan's legislature has passed a bill to boost defense spending by over $8 billion. The funds are slated to be spent on missile upgrades for the Air Force and Navy and come on top of the existing defense budget for 2022. China's foreign ministry has lashed out at what it sees as malicious hyping and a politicization of the issue of Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai. Peng had disappeared from public view after making a sexual assault allegation on social media against former Chinese Vice Premier Zhang Gaoli. Footage of the tennis star in Beijing were released by Chinese state media over the weekend. But these, together with a video call with the International Olympic Committee on Sunday, have done little to allay global concerns over Peng's well-being.
相信大家也已经看到，他近日出席了一些公开活动，并同国际奥委会主席巴赫进行了视频通话。希望某些人停止恶意炒作，更不要政治化。
To discuss what insights the Peng Shuai case offers into the Chinese government's censorship and culture of secrecy, I spoke to Sophie Richardson, China Director of Human Rights Watch.
Peng Shuai, who is well known and well regarded, has made credible allegations about sexual assault, and Chinese authorities are clearly willing to simply paper those over and ignore them in pursuit of sparing themselves some embarrassment. And it makes you wonder what happens to people who are less well known. I think it really shows the growing disdain that the party has for external concern and criticism, and why it's important to use all the mechanisms of accountability available to try to bring a degree of justice and support for Peng Shuai in the face of these allegations. I think it shows breathtakingly bad judgment by the IOC, and particularly by IOC President Thomas Bach, to participate in this exercise. You know, where is the concern about her actual well-being? Where is the concern about participating in a propaganda exercise?
Human Rights Watch itself, as well as other bodies, have been calling for boycotts of the Winter Olympics in Beijing. What sort of effect can these boycotts have?
To not give the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, the political and diplomatic legitimacy they want out of having heads of state or government or other influential state figures attend the opening or the closing ceremonies. And I think this very disturbing incident with Peng Shuai is probably only going to increase concerns amongst governments that have already started discussing a diplomatic boycott and lead them not to go.
You mentioned that you have been talking to some individual Olympians, athletes.
I think a number of them are extremely disturbed by these developments. The Chinese authorities' effective erasure of Peng Shuai and her concerns at a time when in other parts of the world, you see activism by athletes is increasingly important and visible. And I think we can probably expect to see far more athletes. We've seen, everybody from Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka to Martina Navratilova. And I wonder if others who are concerned about the IOC, about sports, about sexual assault, will do so as well in the run-up to Beijing 2022. And then we'll need to see how the Chinese government reacts to that.
A 39-year-old man has been charged with intentional homicide for allegedly driving his vehicle into a Christmas parade in the U.S. state of Wisconsin. Darrell Brooks made his first court appearance on Tuesday, 2 days after the weekend rampage, which left 6 dead and 60 injured. He was out on bail at the time of the incident after being charged with trying to run over his ex-girlfriend during a domestic dispute earlier in November. A jury in the U.S. has ordered 17 white nationalists to pay more than $26 million in damages over the violence that erupted at a rally in Charlottesville in 2017. The 2-day rally in Virginia left 35 injured and 1 dead. The victims had sued organizations for assault, battery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The Unite the Right rally was organized as part of efforts to stop the removal of the city's statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee, a hero among white nationalists, but a symbol that for many represents the legacy of racism in the United States. U.S. President Joe Biden has ordered the release of 50 million barrels of oil from the country's strategic reserves to lower fuel costs. It is the largest ever release of oil from the reserves. The release will be made in coordination with China, India, the United Kingdom, Japan and South Korea. The president hopes the move will bring down costs at the pump ahead of the holiday season. According to the American Automobile Association, gas prices in the U.S. are more than 50% higher than a year ago. Pages of Albert Einstein's working notes on his theory of relativity have sold for $13 million at auction in Paris. It's a record price for anything written by the scientist. The 54-page manuscript contains some of Einstein's calculations as he developed his landmark theory of relativity, which was published in 1915. The notes were handwritten by Einstein and his Swiss colleague Michel Bessot between 1913 and 1914 in Zurich. It was Bessot who preserved the pages for posterity. Grilled ribs served with a secret sweet sauce. Pumpkin cakes sprinkled with popped superfood Taiwan oil millet. These are just some of the innovative dishes created by a new generation of Indigenous chefs in the southeastern county of Taidong. By fusing traditional cuisine with modern methods, they're serving up their flavors to a wider audience than ever before. Wei Zhonglu has a story.
Ibu is preparing an indigenous gourmet treat for her customers. She's a Bunong cook, and this millet dish is one of the most famous on her menu. She stirs it for 2 hours so it reaches the right consistency. Ibu spent a year learning how to make this dish from a tribal elder. Since then, she's become the tribe's millet specialist.
老人家在我的脸上都是看到小米，就是刻着你就是专门要煮小米的人，所以老人家就会讲述更多他们以前有吃过的传统的料理。经过了这一次之后，我就觉得传统的味道，尤其是那遗失的料理，是一件很值得再把它重新做回来的事情。
Ibu also takes great care to serve the food in a traditional manner, on leaves and bamboo. The millet grows right next to her restaurant, which only adds to the dining experience. This is her way of telling the story of her people and their culture.
我爸爸常说，如果说没有小米的话，就不会有布农族的祭典，因为我们的所有的祭典都是因为小米而办。在什么季节该种什么植物，然后什么像是玉米啊、甘蔗啊，还有一些地瓜，都是随着小米而种植的，所以那些菜色就会出现在我们的风味餐里面。当我们在诉说这个料理的时候，可以让游客能够更知道说他为什么要吃这一道菜。
Fayang, another indigenous cook, also gets many of her ingredients from her own restaurant's backyard.
其实野菜呢，对我们阿美族来说是非常常见的，因为它就长在生活周边。所以其实客人来到我这里做体验的时候，就是会带他们到小野菜园，先认识野菜。其实有很多部分都是每一个菜都是跟那个我们自己的文化有做连结。
After living in a big city for years, Fayang returned home to her family. And she says this restaurant is a new opportunity to reconnect to her roots.
应该说我们池上的我们这个部落，就是它跟汉人比较接近，对，所以我会觉得小时候就会觉得，好像就只有丰年祭的时候才会接触到文化，像平常日常就比较少。
Most indigenous food in Taiwan is geared to tourists and has been adapted to cater to the taste of the Taiwanese majority. But there are more people like Ibu and Fayang who want to share the genuine spirit of indigenous culture, and the Taitung city government wants to help them.
有一群年轻人想回家，然后他们也很想把自己的文化，自己想要让外地人了解的那一个部分，用食物来做呈现。可是，在这样子，大家是在一个单打独斗的状态。那我们这个计划可以给的帮助，就是在餐食的服务上面的一些建议，还有整个空间的一个调整改造。
To make the most authentic indigenous cuisine, these restaurants use a lot of traditional crops, which then encourages tribes to keep growing them and gain their food sovereignty.
当它夯起来的时候，它是不是就开始会有一个量，就会产生了一个需求，需求就会反映到种植的面积或是采植的那个分量。
Du He, an indigenous writer, visited all the restaurants that work with the city project. She said that by presenting traditional food in a modern way, these restaurants plant a seed of curiosity about their culture.
It's still very original and still very natural. And I would say that's how I see indigenous food. It's not just food to feed people. And it's more about like the story behind it and also like a lot of wisdom behind it.
Taiwanese indigenous people have struggled for decades to regain power over their cultural discourse. Now the younger generation is being creative about merging tradition with modernity by using food as a way to preserve their stories while building a connection with those around them. Asnaya Zhou, Wei Zhenglu for TaiwanPlus.
Ahead of the Golden Horse Awards, known as Asia's Oscars, TaiwanPlus is showcasing a number of award-winning films. We'll be streaming the best in local cinema, including Oscar-winning director Ang Lee's acclaimed Father Knows Best trilogy. Here's a sneak peek.
We're witnessing the results of 5,000 years of sexual repression.
Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. We leave you with images of Athens' annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.